noting the time and presence of the quorum, I call the Boxborough Select Board meeting of June 27th, 2022 to order. We'll do a roll call to see who's present. Les?
Present.
Diana?
Lapari, present.
Wes?
Present.
John?
Present.
And Jennifer, present. I do have some announcements. Okay, so first of all, we have Lieutenant O'Brien. Warren O'Brien is retiring, and we are having an event tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock in the Grange Room for breakfast to wish him well. He's also got his send-off on Thursday at the end of his last shift, which I think ends at 3. So you can welcome to show up at any of those events. So we have started our search for the new town administrator, and we have a community survey that's been posted to the town website. So your opinions will assist the recruitment consultant and the screening committee as they identify candidates. And the survey is open till July 15th, and it's on the main page of the town's website under latest news. We're looking for more members for the Public Celebrations and Ceremonies Committee. They do the holiday tree lighting, the parades for the Memorial Day and Pfeiffer's Day, and there is a resident interest form for boards and committees under quick links on the homepage, or you can email Kelly Price at boxboroughmass.gov. We have positions open for police officer to fill shifts and associate planner. And those applications are under employment opportunities and quick links. Our fabulous Boxborough Museum at 575 Middle Road will be open Sunday, July 10th from 2 to 4. Boxborough's historic treasures include the 1850 scale, which is sensed enough to weigh a penny and strong enough to calibrate a 50-pound weight. The new hearse that was built in 1881, and the old hearse, but you have to come and see how old it is old. Admission is free and all are welcome. For more information, if anyone wants to arrange a private tour for a small group at a different time, call John Fallon, 978-264-0069. If you have a concern about an item not on the agenda, you can raise it during the community concern section. If you have a question or comment about an item on the agenda, you'll be recognized after board members have opportunity to get their questions answered. And due to time constraints, the board may not be able to accommodate comments from all residents on all topics. Please wait to be recognized by the chair before addressing the board. We ask that participants be respectful and civil, and thank you for your understanding. All right, so are there any community concerns? Okay, seeing none, we'll go straight to the, we're going to skip over year-end statutory budget transfers. We don't have any at this time. And we're going to go to 4B, which is the presentation on the Water Resources Committee. So I'm going to turn it over to Les. Unless if there's anyone else who needs to be unmuted, just let us know.
Thanks, Jennifer. This is a follow-on to an action that the board voted back in April to have the Water Resources Committee come to this board and make an update and presentation on the current state of activities related to what we've been calling the Western Water issue, which you've been hearing about from time to time over the past several years as I've updated the board at our regular meetings. But since there have been a number of recent developments that are coming together, it's a very opportune time to update the board on where things are now and some very important opportunities coming up in the near future. So that is what this presentation is about. It's very short, so details will have to be deferred to a later time, and I'm hoping this is the first of several ongoing engagements with folks that are interested in this topic. I see that we have a number of people in attendance who are aware of what's going on here. We have members from the Harvard Ridge, not only residents, but the Management Association. Nick Lawler, the general manager of Littleton Electric Light Department, is here, and a number of others. So, and the members of the Water Resources Committee are also here that I can see. So anyway, let me get right into it. And by the way, Rajan is going to advance the slides so that I don't get confused about sharing my desktop. So Rajan, do you want to go ahead and do that? So briefly, what's this all about? There are 476 condo units on what I call the western side of town, which is west of 495. This is along Swanson Road and Codman Hill Road. That's Harvard Ridge, Brook Village, and the Codman Hill apartments or condos. There's about 476 units. They were all built in the early 70s. This, by the way, is long before I came to Boxborough. This is before the existence of the current amended zoning bylaw of the town of Boxborough, and actually predates a lot of the modern regulations related to water and public water supplies that are resulted from the EPA's adoption of the Clean Water Drinking Water Act in 1973, I believe. And as a result, it leads to a number of difficulties with respect to these residential units. There are about 1,200 town residents that live in this part of town, which is about 20% of the town's population. There are lots of things that are problematic about these properties, but the predominant thing to keep in mind is that basically the wells for each of these properties, and by the way, each property has its own set of wells. There are more than one well in most of the places. There are public water supplies regulated by DEP. But these wells and their associated wastewater systems, which have discharges into the groundwater, they're too close together. This situation would never be permitted under the current zoning bylaws and regulations. But this is a situation that arose due to the age of the properties and things that have changed around them. So they're too close, and there's no room to relocate things to try to address the issue. So now we have a number of non-compliant systems that are faced with some challenges. One of the issues is to renew on a periodic basis the wastewater discharge permits, which are a DEP regulated process. Anybody who holds a wastewater discharge permit has to have that renewed on a regular basis going through DEP. That means there'll be certain requirements that the discharge be subject to regulation of contaminants, which is especially important if the discharge is into or near the zones for a public water supply. There have been historically high sodium and chloride content in the water over time, which has been a rising concern of DEP. DEP actually first brought this to the town's attention just at the time that the Water Resources Committee was getting started back in 2018. They held a number of meetings with the stakeholders, that is the owners and representatives of the associations in those properties, to alert people to this problem and to try to see if some solution might come forward from collective action. Recently, PFAS has been detected in all of these public water supplies, and that's another issue that the owners of these public water supplies will have to address, because that's a regulated contaminant under DEP's control. Raj, on the next slide. So our view is that these Western condominium or residential properties, they're a key housing resource. As I said, there are 476 units, 1,200 residents, 20% of the town. Many of them are investor-owned properties. This is an important housing resource. People who are familiar with the housing situation in town are probably aware that on the eastern part of town, single-family homes and are very, very expensive properties. Typical median price for a house in Boxborough these days is, I'm not sure of the exact number, it's north of $650,000 right now, I think. That's the one side of town. It's very bimodal distribution of housing. On the western side of town, you can buy at market rate units for living in garden style apartments or condos that can be had for under 200,000 in many cases. So they have always been that way. They've always been very modestly priced against the prevailing market for single-family homes in our part of the world, and in particular the Boxborough-Acton area. So this is a very important housing resource in a designated environmental justice area, which is got a lot of residents in town who live here. Our belief is that the town has a vested interest in the long-term viability of this housing stock, which will come under some pressure, an economic threat, if you will, from water and wastewater issues that will require remediation or a solution that can be quite expensive. So let me go on to the next slide, Rajan. Now, recently we have some updates. Folks may be aware that the Water Resources Committee had been focused for a long time, actually going back to when CDM explored for water in various parts of town, including both halves of town, both east and west, and found a very large source of water on the Harvard Sports Club land. Access to that source is problematic for a number of reasons. However, a new water source may become available in the town of Littleton. This was not true until very recently. Probably it became known in early February. The town of Littleton acquired this property with a well on it that they have been exploring and finding that it's very, very promising as a very large and significant source of water. That's a new actor in the equation. So, in fact, the Harvard Sportsman's Club land and potential well thereon may not be needed at this time to address the situation. The premise of the Water Resources Committee always was that for us to encourage the town of Littleton to bring water into Boxborough, we would have to bring something to the party. In other words, enough water to make up for what we would consume and to make it worth their while, and share the resource in some equitable fashion that would have to be codified in an agreement and also in probably special legislation. So this new well that has been acquired by the town of Littleton could serve Western Boxborough. Littleton Water Department has in fact initiated engineering studies on this well. They have retained Weston and Sampson as an engineering firm to conduct the new source approval process and to see if they can bring that well online and in fact be able to expand their whole distribution system so that it could serve Boxborough and other customers in Littleton. The Littleton Water Department is in fact pursuing federal infrastructure funding via the state SRF process. That's the state Drinking Water Revolving Fund. It turns out that because salt has always been a part of the problem here in that part of town, it is exposed to heavy salting on both 111, which is a state highway, and Route 495. There used to be an open salt shed that you may have noticed there on the corner of Swanson and Mass Avenue. And at any rate, this is the salty part of town. It's not unique to that part of town, but it's unusual in its severity. So Mass DOT, because they have some role in putting down salt on the two state highways, has a program for the entire Commonwealth to help address salt remediation where it's become a problem. So Mass Department of Transportation has been working with the Littleton team and talking to us as well about their ability to provide funds to help address the issue. And at the current time, they are talking with Littleton about providing design funds to help them produce a design for a potential expansion of the Littleton water system, which would access the well that I mentioned at the beginning. So things looking very promising, but we've kind of gotten a little bit ahead of ourselves in the sense that not everybody knows about all this good news. The legislative delegation and the Littleton Water Department and town of Littleton want to hear from the town of Boxborough in some formal fashion. We've had lots of conversations with the principals involved, but it's gotten to be time to make a formal statement of where we stand and what the possibilities are to go forward. And to do that, we need to get some more information so we can develop a plan and some recommendations. Next slide, Rajan. So these are the four principal options that we see that are available on the table right now. By the way, there was a pretty thorough study by WPI addressing this whole issue. If you've been to our Water Resources Committee homepage, you can find it. This was a study commissioned by DEP, and the students at WPI did a very good job of analyzing the situation and making some recommendations. And what came out of that study was that the most obvious and simplest way to address the problem, which is the proximity of wastewater discharges to drinking water wells, would be to extend the Littleton Water Department system into the area where the condos need to have clean water. This would appear, based upon initial analysis, to be the lowest cost solution overall. And that the funding of this would be, in our opinion, best done through a combination of grants and betterments on the owners of the properties. That's based on the theory. So far, it needs to be further research that bearing the expense of upgrading the systems individually on their own and passing those costs along to the residents and owners of the individual units is very likely to be more expensive than joining forces and getting the economies of scale about bringing in the extension of a large public water supply system into that part of town and taking that cost instead. That needs to be analyzed in some detail, but that I think is the indication that we have at the moment. And this can be done by utilizing this potential new source. Now, this is a complicated business. There's lots of moving parts. It's going to require further engineering investigation, as I mentioned. It will require an intermunicipal agreement of some sort, special legislation, and numerous state approvals. Nonetheless, it's not the first time this has been done. Other towns have done it. And so there is a path that we can follow to pursue if we want to do this. The other option is to encourage the owners to collaborate on a solution. This was the intent of DEP in organizing those very first stakeholder meetings back in 2018. They, in fact, held several meetings with the stakeholders. These are investor owners, for the most part, and the management companies, the condo boards, and so on. But for whatever reason, there was really no traction in this. Probably it was too complex. It was just didn't quite click, and the town has no leverage to force that to happen. So since there was no voluntary uptake at the time, that option is kind of languished in the background, and it would appear on the face of it to be a more expensive solution for each of the individual stakeholders in this problem. Another option would be for the town of Boxborough to develop its own municipal system to serve that part of town. The problem right now is that we have no town-owned water source to do that with. We would have to acquire one. And as I mentioned briefly earlier, we had investigated acquiring a source located on the Harvard Sports Club land, presumably through purchase of the appropriate properties. But that is no longer being actively pursued. We don't have exact numbers, but based upon the CDM study back in 2006 for a similar system, and also Littleton Water Department's analysis of the extension, and given that we would have to do our own water treatment plant, the cost of doing that would certainly be in the range of $20 million or more. So it's a big number. Not only is it a big number from the money department, but it's a very big effort. It would require putting in place a new management structure for the town, hiring staffing that has got expertise in running public water systems, having ongoing management responsibility and operations. So that did not appear to be very attractive. The other option is to do nothing. However, the consequences of doing nothing are that you then run the risk that that important housing resource will come under some pressure. Owners may be unwilling to keep making the appropriate investments to keep up their property. The cost of doing it themselves may raise cost to live there so high that it becomes less attractive. At any rate, it wouldn't happen overnight, but over time, it would put negative pressure on the viability of what is a very important housing resource for the town. There are even potentially legal and liability issues. After all, these properties are in the situation they're in because they were following the rules of the current zoning at the time. And so therefore, the town may have some liability here, which has not been explored, but the possibility is out there. So Rajan, you want to move on? So the recommendation of the Water Resources Committee is that first that we communicate to Littleton, the town and its water department formally, that this select board supports continued feasibility study of the extension of their system into Boxborough, including the ramifications for the financing options and the economics of it, so that we can communicate to the property owners what would be the consequences of going in that direction versus not doing that. That we then also engage and brief our legislative delegation. The Office of Senator Eldridge and Dan Senna are aware of the efforts of Littleton Water Department to explore bringing in water, but they have let us know that they want to hear from Boxborough how we feel about it, and that we begin to outreach to the affected owners, tell them more about this, get into the details, explore the consequences of the financing options, the cost sharing, and so forth. For this, we have a resource that can be brought to bear. RCAP Solutions, which some of you may recall, actually had a free water testing program in town. This is not the PFAS testing program, but this is when they came in and tested people's wells and inspected their septic systems. They do a number of activities like this across the Commonwealth, but they are available to assist the town in exploring this problem and working with Littleton Water Department at no cost to the town. So they're just looking for us to indicate a willingness to do that. There's a simple one-page, literally, community engagement letter, which they've given to us to take a look at. And this would be a resource that we could use to help us address the issues of communication and outreach. And meanwhile, we need to continue evaluating this set of options with Littleton Water Department and gathering more information. So that is the recommendation. And it leads me to want to propose a motion. And Madam Chair, I don't know what you want to do at this point, to ask for questions, or what's your pleasure?
I think we should discuss and then see if the motion is appropriate, because I think it might be, but I want to hear from everyone else, if that's all right, Wes.
Fine.
Okay, John, and then Diana.
Les, I think this is a great idea. Thanks for all the hard work that you did. Is this related to the recent $24 million that Littleton Water received as part of a grant, or?
Well, Nick Lawler, who is the general manager, can answer that more authoritatively, but I believe that was for their sewer project.
Okay. Okay. And do you know where the potential new well is?
Yes, in a general sense. If you're aware of that part of town, which is the where Taylor Road crosses 495, there's now an Amazon warehouse there, and there's a parking lot. Those used to be Digital Equipment Corporation properties. Later, they were HP properties. Amazon bought both properties, and torn them both down, built an Amazon warehouse. As part of that deal, the town of Littleton acquired a chunk of land. I'm not sure how large it is. It's a land that contained the well that Deck put in to service the properties back in the, whenever it was, I don't know, early 80s perhaps.
Yep.
And it's just been sitting there. And since they had it, the Littleton Water Department investigated the strength of that source and found that it's very significant. It's on the Beaver Brook aquifer, and it has a large potential. They are in the process of actually doing a pump test on it. They've done some preliminary pump tests, and the results are very promising. So I don't know exactly where it is, but it's kind of where the other building is, not where the warehouse is, but the other property.
Yep. Okay. And Wes, I know it's still early. Is there any ideas as to how they would get the water to Codman Hill and Swanson?
Well, there are a number of ideas, and we've kicked around a few of these with Nick and his team. But basically, they would need to bring piping in from Littleton and bring them down through the Campanelli property. Probably that's the most direct route, which means going under the Beaver Brook Road, which of course is a private road right now. So there's an interesting complication there. They already have power in that road under an easement. This would be adding water, and then bring those pipes into Boxborough. Well, it's already in Boxborough, but then bring it on down to Swanson Road, which is a town road. Then the town would have to provide access and put pipes in the ground there. There's other ways to get the water in, but they're all more circuitous and likely more expensive.
Okay.
I see Nick has his hand up. He may want to add more to this.
Yeah.
Sure. Go ahead.
Thanks, John. Just to kind of answer, it sounds like you have three questions there. Nick Lawler, General Manager, Light and Water, Littleton. Appreciate the time here today. The $24 million, you are correct. That is the $24 million SRF project that we were successful in getting. It's for a treatment plant on Wickham Ave, which is very close to the area. I don't know if you know what Wickham Ave is. It's pretty much at the junction of Wickham Ave and Taylor Street. When we designed that plant, we designed it because we knew that there was a potential water source at the Harvard Sportsman's Club in other areas around there, with the ability to take in one more water source. So we didn't know where that water source was going to come from. We were hopeful that it was a Harvard Sportsman's Club. That turned out not to be the case. In the meantime, we were able to acquire land as part of that Amazon project that Les talked about. We acquired about 60 acres of land. There was a test well from the 80s. I believe it was going to be college, maybe Regis calls, satellite call, or Leslie or something. They did a test well to serve the college at the time, looked promising. It never went anywhere. Deck took it over, turned to HP. The short-term test on that well looked promising. Like Les said, it was maybe 500,000 gallons a day from that well. That was a short-term test. There still has to be a 15-day pump test, working with the DEP on that to make sure that it's done in a way that we don't impact the environment and can be sustained. So that's the well. And Russ, Les talked about the route. It would be through Beaverbrook Road. We wouldn't need a Route 2 crossing. When we did the bridge, there was 2 pipes put in there at the time. So we would need a transmission main from the well, directionally drilled under Beaverbrook to Wickham Ave, And then a distribution pipe will be put in from the plant all the way down to the old Cisco site, the Campanelli site. But the Route 2 crossing is already in place, which is great news because that's a large expense.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
I think it's vitally important to continue to support this project because of the federal funds that are available. I think, if your board was to support this, it would give us and your board the ability to lobby federally for funding for this. And Les talked about all the great things that are associated with this project that allow us to lobby the environmental justice area, PFAS. There's a lot of things tied to this that allow us to lobby hard for federal funds.
Okay. So Nick, I mean, what you're looking for from the board is basically a willingness to go forward with Littleton Electric, but we're not committing any kind of any funds at all. We're demonstrating interest, correct?
That's it. I mean, like Les stated, there's a lot of work left between the two communities that have to be done. Right. All we need is, this idea makes sense to pursue it, from a funding standpoint, federally and through the DEP and through the state. I see Mary Drew Pigsley's on. She's been a tremendous ally for this project from the DEP. And that's it. That's basically all we need to do. And until the answers are had, we're still probably a ways away from that. That's all it is. It's just support and advocacy.
Yeah. So by providing that level of support, the various funding agencies would be more interested in listening to us, correct?
I believe so. Yep. Okay.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks, Wes.
Hey, Diana.
Okay, so I have some comments and I have some questions. I've expressed some reservations about this from the beginning because for a couple of reasons. First of all, it concerns me that the owners and the investors, and it's 30% investor rate, which is not a small number, have shown absolutely no interest. Now, I understand we got some letters saying, yes, we are interested, but nobody's come to the table to say, yes, we're looking for the solution. And that concerns me. And I know that Les said it's because, it didn't work out or it didn't stick. Well, I'm in an apartment or I'm in my own unit and I can't drink my own water or I don't want to drink my own water. One would think that would be something that would force me to take some sort of action, certainly in the last 5 years. So this concerns me. That's the first thing. The second thing is the idea of bringing water to this area, especially coming down through the Beaver Brook area, AKA the former Cisco campus, is going to lead to, more than likely, providing an easy water source to significant residential development on that parcel. That is an issue that was brought up at town meeting. It is concern about more residential development in town. And I think that is something that needs to be examined very, very closely. The third thing is, we are talking about 20% of the residents, but there are 80% of the residents out here that have to maintain their own water and have to renovate their own systems and have to do whatever they do. My own well, I had to put in a whole system because I had too much salt from the road. So, what is the town going to do about that part of it for the other 80%? And this brings me to the cost, because nothing is free. And Les even said in his presentation, Littleton Water District is going to want something from Boxborough. Or what is it that Littleton Water District is going to want from Boxborough? And to me, that translates to some kind of a financial investment on some level, not just our saying, let's find a solution, let's work together. Bringing pipes into Boxborough, bringing them down Codman Hill Road, bringing them into Swanson Road, that's all going to be some sort of a cost. I know it has been said that we can have it pay back from the betterments from the owners and from grants, but we have absolutely no assurance of that. So is it a question, and this is a question to Les and to Nick, is it a question of Boxborough advancing money and then recouping it? Because it's going to come down to that. So if we go down this path and we say, yes, we're going to explore it, and yes, maybe we're not committing to it, nonetheless, we're going to be faced with that down the line without having gotten, and I want to go back to that, my first point, without having gotten the full participation and the active participation of the people who are being affected. So I have my concerns about this round robin kind of situation without, it's more of a pulling situation than a pushing situation. And that is a dangerous place to be, because we could end up with a financial investment from Boxborough without the ability for these owners and these condo owners and these investors, or their willingness to participate fully to the extent that we recoup our money. So these are my concerns, and perhaps Les and Nick can answer the question regarding.
Can I ask Les to, because I think you raised some good questions that I hope will be part of the exploratory process, which right now that's all we're at. But Les, you mentioned that this area is designated for environmental justice. Can you please just describe what that means and what our responsibilities are, and how one goes about getting that designation?
Well, it's a designation that's given by the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. I always get the acronym wrong, but it's a state agency, and it's a combination of incomes and designated communities. And I can't tell you how it's exactly defined. It's not just confined to the western part of the town. That is, it's not just west of 495. Parts of Hill Road are part of the environmental justice area. It's larger than just the western part of town. But it's perceived to be an area that would benefit from town involvement and town sponsorship of helping people get solutions for community problems. Nick has been exploring this with his efforts at the federal level, and believes that this would be a factor in favor of getting access to grants and so forth to help with this project. The questions Diane raises are very good ones. Unfortunately, we can't answer them until we do some more research, which is the whole point of saying, do we want to find out more information about this and define the parameters of what the solution would look like? How would the cost be borne by the owners, a net of any investment from outside sources such as grants? On the rosy side of things, it could end up costing the town very little, because we would not have to recoup any expenses. They would all be borne through the ratepayers and grants. Our framework for this on the Water Resource Committee is that, unlike previous attempts at addressing water problems in that part of town, this would not be cost borne by the general tax base in town, but by the users of the system, and offset by grants and so forth, infrastructure funding.
Right.
Which is-
I haven't answered. May I just follow up? The question of development is a big question. It is of concern to people. And it, as I said, it was brought up at the ATM specifically about the Cisco property. And that is a property that could use this kind of system to develop a significant number of residential homes. And that is another concern which can you address that? Have you thought about that, or is that not a concern?
Yes, we've thought about it, but again, it's one of those things that will have to be explored in detail. My opinion is that the way you would address that is that by defining a water district that would be served by this system, and it could exclude the Cisco property because it's not zoned for residential use at this point in time. This is intended to serve the residential properties in the 3 condo complexes that exist on Swanson and Codman Hill Road. All of the commercial properties that are in that part of town already have relatively modern, compliant water and wastewater systems. They're not looking for external sources of water. They don't have this problem of a highly constrained wastewater discharge into the zone 1s and 2s of their wells. This is a very special case of a problem that's only applies to those condo associations. So by defining a water district appropriately, you can preclude serving water to people that you don't think need it. For example, the entire former Cisco, now the Campanelli property, Campanelli has not expressed any interest in participating in this project, but they are willing to talk and hear more about getting access through a right-of-way in the road to bring water down. Again, it's all part of the relatively complex problem that needs to be addressed through further research and conversations.
And just one more follow-up, and that is, and we're talking about this study, and you've said several times that you felt that this could be a lower cost option than individual owners or even banding together to treat their systems as opposed to bringing new water system in. I would hope that any feasibility study would have those comparisons. You know, like any good environmental study, there always are alternatives that the proposed solution is measured against, including the do nothing, including the do nothing option. And so to analyze those costs, do nothing, individual treatment versus this water supply, it really should be spelled out if we're going to make any kind of decision about what actually is the best alternative.
I agree, Diana. We've got a lot of questions to be answered, and I think, we're just at the beginning, but I think those will have to be answered before we can vote. Okay, John?
Now, my only question right now is, we're talking about some short-term actions that might be required. And I'm wondering, is there a cost to Boxborough for pursuing those short-term activities?
No.
No cost. So the feasibility study is no cost to the town.
Well, as far as I know from my conversations with Nick and his team, that they can bear the cost of doing some of the feasibility studies now. RCAP Solutions is willing to provide consulting and management expertise and to help with the communications to the property management and owners, and so forth. So as far as I know, rough approximation is it's not going to cost us anything until we're ready to address some of the hard questions that Diana is asking. Well, what would the breakdown be and how would it work and what would that look like? But we're far from being able to answer that at this point.
Right. No, there's a lot of questions. And I've worked with RCAP before, and they're a fantastic organization. Thanks. Thank you very much. I don't know if Nick wants to add anything to that.
Oh, he can't unmute.
Oh, there you go. Awesome. Thanks. A couple things. Yeah, there are no costs to the town of Boxborough. Right now, we're working very closely with the state, Mass DOT, to do the SRF application that's needed for the new well, and to do the short-term pumping test, 15-day pump test for the new well. That's really the next step. And Littleton benefits from that well, regardless of the Boxborough situation. And we'll take as much water as we can get. Going back to Diana's questions, which were all great questions. It's our vision that we're going to take on the burden of borrowing the money for the new well, for the distribution system, for the transmission main. These will be our customers. That shouldn't fall back to the town of Boxborough. That's going to be covered by Littleton Light and Water, the town of Littleton, similar to how we expanded the electric system 110 years ago. To Boxborough, and that would be recovered through betterments. I think Diana said that. That's how we would do it. It's how we would do any expansion of the water system. I don't know how that mechanically how that works out right now, but that's our general thought on how we recover that cost. It's my hope that we get funding through the federal government for this. It's a very unique project in a unique situation. As far as, trying to limit the economic development that might come from this or the housing, there's not that much water there. That new source is only 500,000 gallons a day. We can't support, at least from the water department, any sort of growth. We're only doing this to support what is a known need at this time. And that can be covered through the IMA, I believe, of what our intentions are. Our intentions aren't to try to sell water. We were brought into this conversation maybe 2 or 3 years ago or less, and we've been just trying to help. We didn't have water at the time. We started these conversations, so we were really just more of a technical resource to you folks. which we can continue to do. You know, we have a long relationship with the town of Boxborough, one that we respect very much and want to continue to have that relationship with in any which way we can help. So I think those maybe answer Diana's questions. Doing nothing to me is not an option. You know, you have people that need help, people that can't afford to help themselves right now. We should be doing something.
Agreed. Okay, Mary Jude.
Thank you, Nick.
Can we unmute her? Oh,
Great. Thank you so much for the ability to be here today. I really appreciate it. I feel very strongly about this project and have been advocating on the commissioners level, meeting with the legislative delegation, meeting repeatedly with the Water Resources Committee, just trying to get a handle on how to advance this project. It's a significant project when it comes to public health. To have 20% of the town's population affected by this emerging contaminant, this group of contaminants called PFAS that were not around 5 years ago. 20% of the population where the levels exceed levels that are considered safe for pregnant women, nursing mothers, infants, and immune compromised people really does present a public health problem for the town. To Nick's point about the financing from the state revolving fund, the PFAS projects are given preferential scoring in the SRF. It's a competitive process to get the loans and in some cases debt forgiveness, principal forgiveness. But the PFAS projects have all been getting funded because of the priority of this for the Commonwealth. So we are standing by in any way that we can help to mitigate this situation from a public health perspective, from an environmental justice perspective. I'd be happy to send over to the board the information about the environmental justice designation. It covers about 16% of the town is considered an EJ community. So I'm happy to send that along, and also to answer any follow-up questions if you want to send them along through Les. But again, thanks for the invitation. I really appreciate it.
By the way, Mary Jude is with the DEP. She's quite familiar with the town of Boxborough.
great. Thank you. Okay, Jim.
Hi, am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Hi, I just want to, I'm Jim Sayek. I'm president of the Board of Trustees at Harvard Ridge Condominiums. There were a couple of misconceptions that I'd like to address. First of all, Nick, I know you didn't mean it this way, but it's not that we can't afford to help ourselves, but we're looking for the best, most, optimal long-term solution. If it includes more than just our property, that's even better. If it serves the entire west end of Boxborough as part of a community solution, that would be best. But certainly we're willing to participate and to pay our fair share. For us, it's finding, again, a cost-effective solution to the public water supply problem over the long term. Hopefully one that will, last well later than our participation ourselves on the current board. Secondly, to address Diana's first time, I think she raised excellent questions, and certainly down here in Swanson Road, we're concerned about any additional development as well. However, it is not true that we have not indicated an interest in solving this problem over the last several years. We've worked very diligently with the DEP, with the State Department of Transportation. We're in their water, in the sodium program with them. We've hired a water consultant engineering firm to help us develop solutions. And that's either if we do it on our own or if we participate in a larger community solution. We've been working on this over the past several years consistently, constantly. It's our number one problem, I would say, other than the tragedy that happened here at this time. And it has been, and it will continue to be. So again, anything that you need from us, all the board has to do is ask us. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, Cindy.
Okay, sorry, waiting to get unmuted. Thanks for allowing me to speak, and appreciate the information. This is the first that I'm hearing about this particular effort. So I just want to make a few points. And again, this is very preliminary based on what I was hearing today. First off, we're aware of the aquifer, that our aquifer in Boxborough is clearly connected to the same aquifer that Littleton Water is talking about drawing from. So I just want to point out that water withdrawn from that, the water appears from our geological maps to flow north to south. So it's likely that Boxborough's aquifer is being served from that source. So any withdrawals that are happening up in Littleton could potentially impact people who are being served by that aquifer currently. So, which may be the western end of town, but that aquifer is significantly large and probably serves more folks. So I would ask that Littleton include a study hydrologically of how any withdrawals from this well, and I think he mentioned 500,000 gallons per day, would impact the aquifer to the south, because it is all interconnected. I think John Markowitz mentioned the idea or the concerns about routing, and there was mention of using the Beaverbrook roadway and coming down Littleton County Road. I don't know if Littleton County Road is a privately owned road. That bisects the town of Harvard. So I would also ask whether when looking at your alternatives analysis, whether there's contemplation of including the town of Harvard in any future efforts. Relative to alternatives, I would also ask that the select board be asking about alternatives connecting with the Acton Water District. I haven't heard anything yet about comparing this alternative with what Acton Water District might be able to offer. They are adjacent to us to the east. And finally, I would also ask that currently we're in a situation, and this is more anecdotal than for sure, but I did just look up. There are 5 commissioners on the Littleton Light Board that are all residents of Littleton. To my knowledge, Boxborough does not have representation on the Littleton Electric Light Board. That has become a problem, again, anecdotally, when we are trying to understand some of the Littleton Electric's policies towards our becoming a green community. I would ask if there's any engagement with Littleton Water, that Boxborough make sure that we have fair representation on any future boards and potentially get 1 or more seats by Boxborough residents on the Littleton Electric and Water Department board. So those are my comments for now. And I appreciate everybody bringing this to our attention, and we will continue to monitor this closely. Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy. Okay, Mr. Riley?
Thank you. I'd just like to reiterate, my name is Ken Riley. I'm with the Dartmouth Group. I am the managing agent for the Harvard Ridge Condominium Trust. And I just want to reiterate on what Mr. Sayak stated, that over the last several years, not only have we met with Recap Solutions, the DEP, not only virtually during the pandemic, but also up in their Worcester offices. We have reached out for financial assistance. We've hired engineering firms. We've collaborated with both Codman Farms and Brook Village. Okay. We've actually had the managing agent or the president of the management firm at our board meetings discussing options. We're all in the same boat when it comes to this, as we discussed the DEP renewal of the permits. And typically with the zoning change in 2018 that the DEP did, the discharge for the upgrades of the wastewater treatment plant are just enormous. And Jim said we're financially solid, but anytime you need to potentially take a loan out to borrow money, which impacts, how do we say, 20% of the area that the units are selling between, excuse to correct you, Les, but we're up to about 140 to 175 that the units are selling for. But anytime we need to assess or do a budget amendment towards an owner of tens of thousands of dollars really isn't practical. So as we look at this, and we're really trying to collaborate, and we're not collaborating with the town, but we're collaborating with every other entity that impacts with the town. Okay. It was very disappointing on February 28th, where a method wasn't, or something wasn't passed to move forward with this. We're 4 months later now, and I'm really happy to be here that we're having a discussion. Codman Farms is, Jim Sayak and I hunted down the management company to find a representative there who was acutely unaware of these things going on because no one has their contact information. She is now on board. And Warner Guild unfortunately cannot be here today at the Brook Village. And we're in contact with him as he goes through the permit process, as we do also. We've met with the Department of Transportation. Harvard Ridge has that salt yard for 50 years that has contaminated the area, that doesn't let us discharge our waste to that area because it's already contaminated. So all these things tie together, and I think it's a wonderful progress that something is happening today to discuss this. So we don't need to address this one-on-one, as these are major financial hurdles, okay, for each of the communities as we go through the DEP re-permitting process that most likely will come with what we call a consent order, okay? And to just speak to Mary Jude, she made an excellent point. We are currently supplying a stipend to owners because of the PFAS in Boxborough, okay, that we're now having to deal with another issue to deal with the water supply in the town. I just wanted to put a remark in there and just say that we are very actively involved. And I just want to make that on the record, that more time has been spent trying to analyze this extremely complex issue within those communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Les, did you want to make your motion, and then we can second it and have any other discussion?
Yeah, and before I do that, I just want to thank Ken and the others for being here and speaking up as folks who are directly affected with some knowledge. I think if you listen to Ken, I think you may have some appreciation for how complicated the problem is. And I did not mean to slight the fact that they have been working. I know they've been working to address this on their own. And I guess we're going on the theory that collective action will be a more cost-effective solution in the end run. But we don't know how to quantify that until we do more work. And the whole point of this is to do the more work and find out what the next layer of this onion looks like. So given all that, I would move that the town administrator draft a letter of support for the Littleton Water Department's efforts to explore potential solutions to water issues in Western Boxborough for discussion and vote at the next regular business meeting, and further to invite representatives of the town of Littleton and its water department to attend a workshop with the select board to discuss mutual interest in an intermunicipal agreement, potentially leading to a franchise to operate a public water system in the area of the I-495 interchange.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, and any discussion? Wes?
May I make a friendly request that we kind of lop off the second part of that motion, because I think that's getting really, really, really far ahead of ourselves, discussing the franchise agreements as well as an IMA before we even have explored the feasibility of this.
And I would agree with what Wes just said.
I agree as well.
Les, do you accept the amendment?
I do. We can
Okay.
talk about it next time we get together.
Okay, so we're just voting on the first part of that. Okay, so no more discussion? Okay, I'll do a roll call.
Do we want to, Jennifer, I just wanted to see if we wanted to, because it's so important, we want to restate what the initial portion of that was. I think it was really a letter that would be written.
Yeah,
Sure.
I can do it again. By the way, Rajan has this in hard copy, so.
Okay.
I move that the town administrator draft a letter of support for the Littleton Water Department's efforts to explore potential solutions to water issues in Western Boxborough for discussion and vote at the next regular business meeting.
Second. Okay, that's fine. Yep.
Okay, any discussion from the board? Jim, did you have a comment?
Does he need to be unmuted?
Oh, can you hear me now? I think, yeah. No, we just wanted to say that regardless of what happens going forward, that we really do down here at Harvard Ridge appreciate all the time, energy, and effort that Les and the other members of the Select Board and the Water Resources Committee are spending, partially on our behalf on this issue. And then I'm pretty much going to leave. Thank you. Oh, by the way, I apologize. I don't have a camera on this particular PC, so that's why you don't see me when I'm speaking.
Well, thanks for coming, Jim. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to take a roll call vote. Les,
Fox, aye.
Diana,
Lepari, aye.
Wes,
Okay.
John,
Markowitz, aye.
and Campbell, aye. All right, thank you everyone for all of that. That was really interesting, and I'm glad we had a lot of involvement in that as well. All
Yeah,
right.
thanks.
So moving on, I believe Ed is the one who put together this proposed field use policy. So the issue is, as we all know, every season, every sports season, we start getting all the requests to waive the sports usage field fees, and we keep punting it, saying we'll get to it at some point. So I think we need to make that some point soon. So the field permit application that Ed and the DPW have put together is in the packet. And I think what we need to do is not only to discuss that and any changes to that, but also start discussion about our policy. I don't think we should vote on the policy tonight about, or today about having whether or not we do end up waiving the fees. So does anyone have any comments first on the form? And then we'll talk about the waiving the fees.
Jennifer, this draft is the current form of the application and
Yes.
the policy, right?
Yes. So, John, do you have it? Diana, you want to talk about the
I
waiving?
actually want to talk about the backup, the field use permit policy, not the form.
Okay. All right. So, John, do you have any comments on the form?
Yeah, the only comment I have is sometimes that when we get a request to use the field, it may not be for some of the categories listed under section 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not, in other words, we've had requests where people would like to have a small concert for a charity. And I'm not sure how that gets covered. I did see on some of the other documents that there is requirements for making sure that the field is cleaned. Is there any requirement for police duty on any of these activities?
I would assume that since the select board would have to approve all of these, that we
Right.
could make that kind of request.
Okay.
And it doesn't say that this is specific to sports, but it does say it's recreation facilities. So I would assume we could make any changes like that. And if we want to go back and have these questions answered, John, we can do that and not vote on the form tonight.
I actually think the form's actually very good. I think Ed and Linda have done, and all the people who've worked on it have done a very good job. I think that if there was an event that was out of the ordinary, it would come to the select board, and the select board at that point could ask significant questions.
I would hope so.
I wouldn't want to delay this application form.
Okay. Diana, I will call on you first for the, when we talk about the waiving. Okay, Wes and then Les.
Just a point of clarification. Are we considering item 4C, which hold on, let me just make sure. No, the schedule of field permit fees to be different, to be the policy or the form?
Well, we've got the form, which is basically, you know, what's in front of us in the packet. But then we also need to have a discussion about whether or not we change the overall policy, which I guess would affect the form, to waive fees for sports organizations.
Okay, so I'm looking at 9 through 11. Is that the only thing that we're considering the form, or does it also include page 12 on the PDF, the overall PDF from the agenda.
So,
No,
so
I
Wes,
think we're just, go ahead.
I'm just going to say, can you clarify when you say 9 to 11? What is, how does
So
9
9
start?
is the start of 4C, so it says the field permit application, and it has draft.
Okay,
And then we go to
Okay.
the second page, that's 4C, and then the third page that's labeled 4C in the top left. And the page says this application revokes and replaces all other applications. And then the following page is a schedule of field permit fees effective TBD.
right.
And so I guess what I was asking is the schedule of field permit fees effective TBD considered part of the permit application? Meaning, do we discuss it now or similar, I guess, then, or would it be when we discuss the policy, which would then be, I would come after Diana speaking? Is I guess the best way to put it.
Honestly, I'm not sure. I think we might as well just kind of lump it all together.
If you want to
at this
say
point.
it, if you want to talk about it, Wes, go ahead.
Okay, so I guess my main thing was that if on the section 2 of the form, the soccer fields versus the baseball fields, I think one of the points that we've gone through is that baseball and soccer require different investments on behalf of the town. And so I'm not sure if we have 2 separate field fees per sport based on the investment from the town, but also recognizing that our residents and their children are part of these, because that would just be my thinking, that if baseball, like we had to, I'm not trying to bring up the past, but like the groomer, then you have to have somebody specifically operate the groomer along with other things. The soccer fields, are we going to provide lining for the fields? Because from my understanding, all they do is mow them currently, and that's it. But with baseball, they mow and use the infield groomer, maintain the bases, the batting cages, and all of that stuff as well. That's my main question / consideration. But other than that, I didn't really have a major problem.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go to you, Diana.
Okay. That's a really good point that you're bringing up, Wes, about making a distinction between baseball and soccer, because the town contributes a lot more technically to the baseball fields than we do to the soccer fields because of the lining, I think. I don't know very much about this, but that puts me at a disadvantage. But I do think that if there is a distinction in terms of the amount of money that these individual groups have to put into something, then they should be treated differently because of that. My original question went to, and comment went to page 2 of 3 of the field use permit policy, where it talks about the town may, it's the second paragraph, the town may waive reduced fees for the following permitted uses, including but not limited to festivities, organized or sponsored by the town, programs initiated and sponsored by Boxborough Recreation, Acton Boxborough Youth Sports Groups, practices and games. But then it says, fees will not be waived for clinics and camps conducted by any groups which charge an additional registration fee to its participants. Aren't all Acton Box Sports, aren't all parents charged fees for that? I mean, what is the distinction there?
I think that means that if you sign your kid up for youth soccer, you're paying for their regular practices, their games, their coach, their t-shirt, all those things. But Acton Boxborough Youth Soccer may run additional camps and clinics that are fee-based, and so those would not be part of the regular registration.
But don't you pay a fee when you sign up your child up for?
Yes, absolutely, you do. You do, but that's outside of the, so that is, go ahead, Wes, you know more about this.
So just to clarify, I think the differentiation is like, right, so we have like the At Bats camp, which is also offered but supported by the RecCom, but offered, and they typically ask for a change of the fee to be based on a percentage of the revenue they bring in. There's also, we have ABYS, and then you have the Strikers League, which is more of like a private club, And so I believe that my understanding of this is that the private club, like the club sports, if they chose to request like the fields, they would pay the full fee because it's like $1,600 for the year for like the private soccer club.
Have they paid fees before? Have we waived those fees for those particular camps?
I don't believe so.
Strikers doesn't request our fields. I think they practice indoors because they're a year-round commitment. But I was just using that as an example. But the At-Bats has asked for not a fee waiver, but a one to be based on their revenue, like to be reduced based on their revenue. But the ABYS, typically what that covers, and also I'm guessing for the youth baseball as well, a lot of times that covers the like the refs and the umpires and their time, as well as the coaches don't necessarily get the coaches, or at least in the youth soccer, the coaches don't get paid. I don't know about baseball. And most of this goes to paying for, also there's like league fees. So if you kid is on like the travel team or other things like that, even though they're through Acton Boxborough Youth Soccer, you have people from like Concord Carlisle coming to play a game here or what have you.
This is very confusing. It's
Right.
complicated.
Les and then John.
Partly prompted by John's question. I think it was John asking about details that might be needed or something. Somebody did.
Yeah.
So that led me to look at this more carefully, and I hadn't looked for this before. So as I read the policy, you don't necessarily have to be proposing to use the field for a sports activity.
Right.
It could be for a lawn dance or something with a band playing and so forth.
Right.
So that leads me to think, okay, a large gathering of people, doing something. And that's a kind of event that, well, maybe you do need to have a detail just to make sure people are safe. But I think the way we would deal with that, we may have actually done that in the past, I don't remember, is that the application would state the intended use and the select board would say that, okay, this is granted, provide us your public safety plan and have it signed off by the chief and et cetera, et cetera. Or make that requirement part of this policy if you wish. But I think we have that option anyway. So for those who are carefully constructing that language, you might want to take a look at that.
Okay.
The other thing I wondered about is the whole section on subletting. I'm not sure I understand the distinction between item 1 and item 2. I don't know why you just can't say subletting a field is strictly prohibited, period. And it gives a couple of examples. If there's a difference there on what's intended by bullet 1 and bullet 2, maybe that could be clarified. But otherwise, I would try to reduce it to one statement of what do we mean by subletting and give an all-inclusive example. It seems confusing to have it in 2 pieces. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. All right, John.
Yeah. Thanks very much. I'm going through this. I can answer a couple of questions. Okay. With people asked about Acton Boxborough Youth Soccer. Okay. So they do provide the lining of the system of the fields. They do provide new equipment for the netting and sometimes all the equipment for netting. I think there have been estimates that they provide in approximately $20,000 of investment to the community for the operation of Acton Boxborough Youth Soccer. Okay. I think that probably a better way for us to go through this is to try to go through the policy. I think the documents in terms of the application itself seems to make a lot of sense. I think it's pretty clear. And looking at the fees, we could debate whether or not the fees should be different for soccer or for baseball, but I think that's just going to start to make more work for us. Is it worth it? But I think if we can really sit down and go through and understand the policy, that's really the part that the select board has the most ownership of. And that's where we should spend our time. Just my opinion.
I think that's absolutely right, and we could go through it section by section. The other thing that we need to determine is how we're going to get the input we need to make a decision on the field use fees, because I feel like we need to get RecCom input as well as at least let the youth leagues know about our discussion and give them time and input into when we have it, or so that they are able to send a representative. So if we can figure out like who needs to be involved in that, John, I don't know if you, because you're the RecCom liaison, if that's something you can do. And then, when we would need to have that discussion by.
And I will talk to RecCom. There's a meeting to discuss Liberty Fields this week.
Okay.
And it has been brought up with RecCom because
Right.
One of the frustrations that we've had is that they've come to us very late every season asking to have the fees waived.
Right.
And
And
when
that's
we
not
start to
RecCom,
say-
that's the individual leagues.
It's not
yes.
RecCom, it's not
Yeah.
RecCom, okay? It's the individual leagues. And when we push back, they say, but we've already collected the money from the
Right.
participants, so we can't go back and get money. I think what we need to let them know well in advance is you need to start to ask for money, and you need to include it in what you're offering, okay? And we've tried to get straight answers with regards to what do they get from Acton when they offer these services. So I'll bring that back up with the next RecCom meeting, okay?
All right.
I'm not
thank
sure.
you.
I'm not sure if it'll happen at this meeting that's scheduled for tomorrow, but the one after that.
All right.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks.
you. And that way we can figure that out and get that on another agenda so we can actually vote on that and get some input. Okay, so we want to go through the policy then. Does that sound like a good plan for everyone? All
Sure.
right. Les, do you have something to say on the policy?
Yeah, so actually I left it up for one other reason, but also a question on the policy. And that is when we get to looking at the fee structure, for those who are really digging into the details here, I guess the question I'd ask is, what part of the fee structure is intended to offset those things which might be driven by the current rate of inflation of everything that you need to buy these days? Is there some area there where things are significantly out of line with what our expectations were when we first set out these fees? I have no idea, but maybe those who are into the details here could think about that. And the other thing is on the policy thing, I think that maybe having a line in there about this non-athletic use of the fields, do we need a policy statement about that? It's kind of silent on that, but maybe making it clearer that events such as that will require, public safety plan signed off by the police chief or something like that.
Okay. All right, Diana?
I just, because I'm so lost in this particular area, and what I really need to look at are the facts. And I need to know what is, and going back to this, what is the cost to Boxborough? How much do we put into those fields for any given group? Is it worth it for us? Or are we basically giving up? And there's always the issue to balance, which is the social, and community issue, and not just the money. But it would be good to know specifically, what does it cost us to maintain the fields for the baseball leagues? What does it cost us? And what kind of job do we do as well? Are we doing a good enough job to make those fields really worthwhile charging for?
Right.
That should be a very important part of this question. Just to say we go in and mow the lawn doesn't mean it's a good lawn. It might be a terrible lawn. It might be a terrible field to play on. So I just need some more detail. And I don't know anything about this, so I need it to come from people who do know something about it.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And the other point to bring up is that sometimes we might spend money on these in order to make improvements to the fields for the current use, but then that opens up other opportunities for use. If we have fields like all the Liberty Field improvement projects, we may be able to recoup some money at some point by charging, like, adult leagues and things like that, if we have facilities that are good. So we can't just, think about what our current costs are. We need to think about balancing the opportunities that those might raise. Okay, John?
Yeah, I think, we did try to get some of the information last year, and I know that I don't know if there's a spreadsheet, but I know there's lists of information with regards to costs that are provided by
Right.
the Acton Boxborough Youth Soccer.
And
So we can
Rajan,
get
did you
that.
have that? Sorry, John.
That's okay. But I think that, and some of the work that we do on our fields, we do just because we want to maintain them. If we don't do it, they're not going to be maintained. It's going to cost us even more to use them in the following season. I think one of the issues that we have, and it's addressed, I think, on the second page of the policy. So after field permit policy has all those items, then the second page, it talks about all requests must be submitted. And this is requests for waiver or reduction of fees. It says all requests must be submitted no less than 30 days. Well, I think that's too short a period of time because we've been running into that where the requests are made. They might be made 2 weeks before, they might be made 30 days before, but they know about this at least 60 days before.
Mhm.
So I think it should, it must be submitted before they submit they submit invoices or bills to the participants. Because if they've already submitted the bills to their participants, we've already missed the chance to include our fees. That's the issue right there. So I think that's one critical piece. And if we can fix that, then we can start to work at what's the overall cost, and are we really going to recoup all of our costs for what it costs us to take care of the fields? I mean, do we recoup all of our costs for anything in town? That's why we pay taxes.
I mean, part of it too is that not all the usage is tracked. When my kids were playing t-ball and soccer, which was 100 years ago, we would sometimes just go out and use the fields. They had to unfortunately put up with me trying to throw a ball at them. But, a lot of the usage is just for recreation and not anything organized. Okay, Diana?
Just the thought occurred to me as we're talking about this. It's a little bit like when we were talking about the agreements at the last meeting. When we have the soccer and we have the baseball and we have those things that we know that come to us every single year, why aren't we just doing some overall agreement with these, make a decision how we're going to charge these entities based upon what, and do a 3-year agreement or whatever, because then they would know, we would know. It's not a question of coming forward every single year. I mean, it might be something to look into, given the fact that they know what they're doing every year, pretty much. They may not know the exact dates, but they.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question to ask when we ask them for feedback, because that may make things easier for them, but it also may, be that they don't know because numbers fluctuate and things like that. So, but I think that's, a good thing.
I mean, we could have a policy,
Yeah.
we would waive the fees for this group, given that they do blah, X number of things as a maximum, and not for this group, whatever the policy turns out to be. But a general overall policy, I know things can change slightly, but it seems like it's pretty much the same every year.
Yeah. All right. So I have written down everybody's questions and comments. I think we need to kind of consolidate those and get another draft. Does that make sense? Okay, John?
Yeah, Jennifer, it makes a lot of sense. I just wanted to thank Ed and everybody else that was involved, probably Linda and other folks who were involved in putting together this policy. Rajan was probably involved. I probably don't know everybody who was, but I think this was a great first attempt to put things in one location all together so that we can have this kind of discussion. That's all.
All right. So I have written things down, as I said. If you have anything additional, you can send it to just me, and I will not distribute any draft until we're going to have it in our next packet, because I don't, not to violate open meeting law. All right. So I don't think we're ready to vote on anything yet, but we at least have an initial discussion. Okay.
Yep.
All right, so moving on to the next thing, which is, so next thing on the agenda. So the VOTEC, I just wanted to bring this up as an initial discussion about how to get started on this. My thought was I would be happy to volunteer to be the select board person to spearhead this as our rep. If nobody objects, which I don't think you're going to. I have already been approached right after town meeting by Adam Klein and Mary Brolin. So they would like to be involved in this. I don't know how many other people need to be involved, but I wanted to get people's thoughts about this. And then my hope would be that if we do have a fall town meeting, we could present some information then. And if we don't, then we would do it at next annual town meeting. So does anyone have any thoughts about how to proceed on this, or whether or not you want to be involved, or suggestions for involvement?
Yeah, I spoke with Carter last week, and we actually got some possible ways we can go about doing this.
Okay.
So the first suggestion would be, before we put together a working group, reach out to some of the volunteer technical schools, and if the select board would be interested, we could draft a letter, and just to reach out to some of the tech schools, and let's say within an hour commuting radius, just to see if they're interested, just to first get a sense of who would be interested, kind of to weed out that process, and then from there we could put together a working group. And like you said, just as some possible suggestions of members who could be a part of it, representative from the FinCom, a representative from the school committee, a parent of one of the students who's a part of the who's already a part of the vocational schools, a member of the select board, and then also we could do either a member of the EDC, since this is supporting local businesses, or potentially a local business operator in town who uses students from the vocational schools.
That's terrific. Thank you. So would you work with Carter to draft that letter? Okay, that sounds great. John?
Yeah, Jennifer, the only person that I think with Rajan has a great list there. I'd also try to reach out to the PTF and see if there's a parent that might be interested, because they would be looking at where do their students want to go. Okay. And so whether it's at Blanchard, well, as they prepare to go to junior high, or somebody that's or student or parent of a junior high student, because they would be directly impacted as to where their child would go following junior high.
And could you break down what the BTF is? Just
Parents, Teachers, Friends. That's Blanchard's version of a PTO.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So it sounds like we have a plan that Rajan and Carter are going to work on a draft letter, and then we'll I'll work with Rajan to come up with members on the working group, and then we can move on from there. Does that sound all right?
Yep.
Okay. The next thing is, so because of COVID, we haven't had the employee and volunteer recognition event, which was for those of you who hadn't attended, it was a barbecue put on by the select board members, like usually on a Sunday afternoon, and wondered about people's thoughts about bringing that back and whether or not we want to cater it or cook. Wes.
My inclination would be to cater something. I did have a brief chat with acting select board chair at the time, David Martin, and he said that it's actually, for them, it's a very enjoyable event because they just have catering, and then they have a brief award ceremony to recognize longevity, among other things, and it really reduces the stress off the board and other staff members, as you just have a catering place come in and provide for everybody. So because organizing I'm not saying that it's not wonderful, but keeping lists of what supplies are needed, dispatching who's doing the supplies is actually a lot of overhead that I don't think people realize. And kind of like when you have like kids' birthday parties, like it's like it may not be the best, like when you go to like Jump Zone or something like that, but the best part is you don't have to worry about the small stuff, and you enjoy the event, and then you it's all taken care of.
Okay.
Yeah, Jennifer, I'd agree with what Wes just said. I think we have money in the budget from our stipends going in. What it also does is it helps to deal with if you have issues with people that have food allergies. Okay, we might decide, okay, we're going to bring grandma's favorite recipe so everyone can enjoy it. And we find out, well, a lot of people can't enjoy it because we have allergies, we have health issues, etc. And also by doing it catered, it would give us a chance to talk to and thank the people individually for all the work that they've done for the community.
Right.
So I would support that.
Yeah, I think from a public health sanitation, it's kind of nice to have it be done by professionals.
Yeah.
I know I've attended a couple events that Rajan has worked with staff on, and Linda Collins has a caterer that she has used that might be helpful. Kelly?
In my travels, I heard someone suggest that maybe we think about doing it on a work day instead of on a weekend, on a Sunday. So asking like the staff to come in on, one of their family times may not be, as appealing as if we did it on like a scheduled work day. That's one of the things I heard. And then I think I also heard too is maybe separate. I don't know. Maybe Rajan can clarify this, but separating the two, is that right, Rajan?
Yeah.
From the boards and the employees. So having the two separate events, but I think that's what I heard.
Okay.
So yeah,
Thank you.
like the idea of doing a employee recognition day and then a volunteer recognition day as two separate events, because I think if you do an employee recognition day, you wouldn't want staff to necessarily be doing anything for that day as far as like any type of thing. So, and then the same for volunteers. So I think just separating those would be a little bit easier.
Okay, that's great feedback. Thank you. Wes, and then Diana.
Yeah, I guess, gonna thank you for bringing those concerns or ideas forward. I think that's something that I would not necessarily have considered before. So I concur with that. Like even having it like a Thursday at like noon to 3 or something like that, and closing town hall so that way the staff can be recognized, and then I don't know, like a Friday or something like that for the volunteer one.
Okay, that sounds great. So, Diana?
Yeah, I just want to say, even though I love to cook, I also love to attend. I also love to attend an event that, you can sit there and actually talk to people. And I think that's true for both of these. And I agree, absolutely. These should be separate events because I think then we can devote more time.
Yeah.
Employees have it's a different, experience. We want to get to talk to them, and with the volunteers as well. But we know a lot of the volunteers. And so, really personally. And so there are a lot of new employees. By the way, I want to ask this question. When is this normally done? Since I don't know.
August. Late August.
Well, or September. It's been later as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think, since we are talking about two separate events, Rajan, when is your next staff meeting?
Typically after the day after the next select meeting.
The 12th. So would you guys at that meeting, would you guys work with the staff to come up with a date that would work for them and end time? Sure. And then we can go from there. Thank you. And then we could pick a weekend that works, or Friday night, or however we want to do it for the select board to put something together for the volunteers. So, and Rajan, we would not require you to put together the employee thing. We would want you to be able to enjoy it.
Okay.
All right, so maybe at our next meeting, we'll everyone look at your calendars and we'll come up with a date for the volunteer event.
Where are these held? Where have they?
Town hall,
Town hall.
Grange.
town hall.
Well, it's been at both, like outside. Yeah. It's been at the Grange. It's been like outside at Town Hall. One
Yeah,
year it was in front of the
typically-
church.
Yeah, typically the last two that I went to, it was like you serve in the Grange and you have like open tables there, and then you have like the picnic tables outside that like DPW drops off like the day before or something like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's good to have it at Town Hall if we can. So,
So we'd have to
Alright.
coordinate with the church if they have an event that period as well.
that's true, if we're going to have it there. Okay, all right, so moving on, cable negotiation update. I put this on because that was one of the things, like within probably minutes of being elected chair, Kirby asked me to look into getting started on that. And I think we need to wait until Carter is back, unless, Rajan, you have discussed this with him.
Yeah, so I can give you an update. I actually just got a brief memo from our council who's been handling the negotiations for us. Just on the status of the cable negotiations. So currently he is negotiating with Verizon
Okay.
on trying to get the agreement together with them. He's currently in negotiations with them, and he's asking for the max 5%, which is 50,000 over 3 years, or 10,000 per year with them. He said he expects to hear back from them on today, but he thinks that it may be some difficulty with them because our subscriber count in Boxborough is actually pretty low to try to get the max. And then he said with Comcast, typically he doesn't try to do them simultaneously, and both companies usually wait on what the other company does before they offer a contract. So he's negotiating with Verizon currently, and then once he finishes with Verizon, he's going to go over to Comcast.
Thank you. So no action needs to be taken by the board.
Yeah, no action. Only thing I believe the board will need to do is actually vote on the contracts themselves.
The deadline is sometime in September, is that right?
So actually, the deadline passed with the town, and I actually had some concerns about that. So when I spoke with our council, he said so long as the town is actively in negotiations with both organizations, the contracts actually don't expire. As long as we're still actively negotiating with them.
Okay, Wes?
What I guess I was just going to say was, while that means that there is no immediate action on behalf of the board, I would just like to remind the board that likely we will need to either have this be rolled into budgeting for the next fiscal year, because as Rajan has said, and as I've said at other meetings, and I will continue to say it, the revenue from this is declining. There are means of which, through legislation, that Jamie and Dan are considering, but the last that I read from that was that the taxes and tax cuts were being deferred by both the Senate and the House in terms of reconciliation. And so what that means is that what that would have done is saying, like, if you pay for Disney Plus, Netflix, or Hulu, based on the number of subscribers in our area, they would add like a tax, like say 20 cents per person. And so if you're the subscriber, let's say you're not borrowing your friends that lives in Littleton or in New Hampshire, per se, this town would get that revenue. But likely there will be a gap in what is needed for BXB-TV and other related services, and what is provided by the cable services. So that is either whether it needs to be a warrant article, and or just rolling it into the budget with some sort of resident education on this. That needs to be a decision that should be made at some point, not necessarily right now.
Okay. All right, moving on to the job description. I'm going to turn it over to Diana. Thank you, Diana, for all your work on this with Carter.
Thank you, Chief. So Carter and I actually met on Thursday, and we had another conversation. Jennifer was unable to attend, but I represented what we had talked about specifically. So what Carter has done here is he's taken the original job description that Jennifer and I came up with, and we borrowed quite a bit from the town of Stowe. We put it out there in a certain format using a lot of cut and paste, actually, and putting it into a general format. Carter then put it into the new template, which is not all that terribly different from the original template we had. But he also said that he said, I expressed your thoughts in a way which is more typical of a job description. And I think my personal feeling is that I think you did an excellent job. The big issue that he and I had a conversation about, lengthy conversation, and we also spoke with Joe Fair. And by the way, I know Carter had suggested that Joe join us if he's available.
He's going to join us for the executive session.
Because Carter had said, I'll put this at the end so that if the board has any questions,
okay,
we can ask Joe.
I've been communicating with Joe about when to hop in. So,
so if we feel we need to, we can have him hop in then. But I hope you've all had a chance to read through this description. The areas that we had a lot of discussion about was actually on page 2 under human resources. So if you go to that section, and this was clarified, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to make clear the authority of the town administrator and to give that town administrator the proper authority in terms of oversight. We want to give the town administrator, the strong town administrator, also the ability to hire and fire in a way which, for those particular positions, that it would be appropriate to do so. Where I had we had a lot of discussion was on the first part about nominating department heads as opposed to appointing the department heads. And I felt very clearly and strongly that using the word appoints in that section removes some of our ability to, he who appoints can remove. And so in talking with Joe, he explained quite well that, the select board by statute has the ability to hire and fire, basically, because we have the appointing authority, and that cannot be taken away from us, cannot be abrogated. But what we can do is we can delegate that authority to a strong town administrator, which we have done, what we're doing here in the first 2 bullets, nominates and then appoints. We would be doing that by delegating our authority to the town administrator. And Joe was very clear that he felt at some point it has to be clear that we could remove that authority. And in the discussion with Joe, it became clear that the way to do that is in the contract with each individual person on some level with some sort of a disclaimer. Carter was, and I'm going to represent Carter's point of view here as well, since he's not on the call. Carter was very strong, had a strong opinion about our not putting that in a job description or making that to be a tenet of the employment in a way, because you're giving the authority, but you say, I can take it away at any moment, which kind of undercuts that authority. But nonetheless, it has to be there somewhere in some way as a way for us to cancel a contract, should we want to, or change that authority or remove that authority from someone if we chose to do that.
Diana, I just have a clarification, which is that the town administrator does not appoint or nominate the library director. That is solely the library trustees. They're the ones who do the contracting and the hiring. Select board is not involved.
So what he did was he put in there, nominates all department heads, excepting the fire chief, police chief, public works director, and director of the library, subject to confirmation by the select board. And then what we would do in our operating procedures, Jennifer, is that we would specify
Okay,
that those department heads, excluding the director of the library, we
yes,
would be responsible for the interviewing of those candidates and the appointment.
okay,
That is the distinction between 1 and 2, which is
right.
appoints all other staff, excepting those under the supervision and control.
So is that why the staff weren't included, most of the staff in the appoint-a-thon?
Right, right. So what Carter was saying is that it's really not, he, if you recall, what he's done with us is he has given us one person, basically, and we have chosen to confirm or not confirm that person, but we also had to
Right.
ratify their contracts. And so, but that is not true for other support staff. Department heads are specific because, for example, the tax collector, the department, the assessor, some of those jobs, as opposed to support staff, those are just hired and fired by the town of, well, not fired. I don't know that fired would necessarily enter into it because I believe that would have to still come before the board. But I know this is confusing, and part of the problem is that we can't be that specific in a job description.
Right.
Right. So a lot of what our policies are going to go into the select board policies, and that will be also referred to when we're talking about a town administrator. I mean, Jennifer, you know, we've had this conversation. We talked about what we wanted to exclude, how we wanted people to be chosen and nominated. And so I don't know if that makes it clear to you, but remember, this is a job description, not the operating procedures.
Well, I think it is clear to me for that reason, because the TA has to be the one who's choosing the staff for town hall.
Right.
That's part of just the operations. It's sort of like,
Right.
you know, the school committee. The school committee hires the superintendent, and the superintendent hires the principals, and then they hire their staff. So,
right.
John?
So that's the question. That's the big question that we wanted to discuss. That and one other section, which we can talk about after we go through this part of it, which is the discipline.
Okay, John, you want to talk about human resources or anything
Yeah,
else besides discipline?
It was human resources. Okay, so I look at what we had under nominates the department heads accepting fire chief, police chief, public works director, and director of the library. But then I look at appoints all other staff excepting those under the supervision and control of so-called strong fire chief. There's nothing about the police chief or the DPW
That's
director.
because I believe statutorily, the police chief does not have appointing authority.
That's right.
That's
yeah.
right.
A
Okay.
strong police chief does not have appointing authority. A strong fire chief does.
Yeah, the statutes
That's
are
By
very different.
regulation. Yeah, the statute.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
because I know that.
Yeah, you don't want to miss that, but yeah.
Right. Okay. Thanks very much.
All right, Les?
I have some nits which I want to talk about, but also a bigger thing. And by the way, if someone sends me the Word version of this thing, I can mark it up. I only have the PDF that was in the packet. So there's a big thing kind of missing here, I think. It's in the very first statement here, the senior men in position responsible for the efficient and effective management of et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What's been left out here is responsible for administrative support for boards that do not come under the select board. We have agreed that we provide administrative support for the Board of Health and for the Planning Board. So I think the wording needs to be changed, not drastically, but to cover that. And I have some suggestions for that. So that's the big thing, I think. Unless I'm missing something, that's missing.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's actually great. I hadn't really thought about that because
yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so on and so on. Other than that, it's some nits. And also, I would strengthen or include a statement that it's not just support for town departments, but also the volunteer committees. That's a very important part of the job. And this has been a topic of conversation now for several years. So that needs to get in here. And I can suggest some wording there for you. Other than that, I think it's mostly some wordsmithing.
Okay. So will you send that to Diana and Carter?
Yeah, would you send me the Word versions? I'll mark it up.
Okay, Carter has the Word version, so we'll have to ask.
Oh, I'm not very good at marking up PDF, so.
Well, I
what
think-
I mean,
Yeah,
maybe
we'll get the Word version
I
to
can
you.
get it for you if it's
Pardon?
if Carter has access to it. I can send it to you. Unless
Okay.
Rajan, you have it.
but mark it with tracking
Yes.
plus.
Pardon?
Mark the changes, tracking them.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
The changes.
I guess there's one other thing, and that is under financial management is chief procurement officer under MGL 30B. Right now, Rajan is the chief procurement officer. So are we rethinking that, or what are we going to do about that?
We
piece?
actually did, because we voted at the last meeting to make Carter the chief procurement officer.
We did?
We did.
I missed that one.
So we made that change.
I would assume that that's the kind of thing too, that the town administrator and the ATA could work out, that if that's,
Delegate that authority.
yes, yeah, they could delegate and we could reappoint or however that needs to be done.
Okay, because I just don't remember that, because I thought our theory going into it, that would be a major piece of the ATA's job is running the procurement operation.
Well, it may be a question of the buck stops here kind of situation. Where, technically the TA is responsible, although it may be delegated to the assistant.
Right, like any other thing that they do in their job description. So
I wanted to point out the other part of it, and that is the fourth bullet down, which talks about implements corrective action and/or discipline, provided, however, that any discipline in excess of 5 days shall be subject to the confirmation of the select board. Jennifer and I felt strongly that while we do want the town administrator to have the ability to discipline employees or appointees, that when it gets beyond 5 days, that we should really weigh in, the select board. So that is put in there as a caveat.
right, because that's more of a, leave of absence kind of thing. It would affect the rest of the operations of town hall, and so that's what we were thinking.
Exactly.
But
Do you see anything else in here, Jennifer, that was left out? I didn't at all.
no, I think it's very good. And not everything has to be in a job description. A lot of it is more appropriate for a contract, but I think it covers everything. So if we want to, what we could do is have Les do the track changes, submit them to Carter, and then we can vote on it at our next meeting or at an upcoming meeting. I think that we can probably allow the search firm to use this as a basis in the meantime, if that sounds okay to you. I know that they're anxious to get started. They're working on the charge and all the advertising. They've come up with a nice little brochure selling Boxborough to potential candidates. So they're, we just don't want to delay that process at all.
Yes, well, again, as I said, the contracts and the operating procedures will be part and parcel of what will be supporting documents when we hire the town.
Right. So we'll let Les give his, feedback, and then we can actually vote on it the next time.
But since you brought it up, Jennifer, you guys picked up on the discipline piece. Does that mean 5 days consecutive or 5 days cumulative? What was the intent there?
For me, it meant cumulative, consecutive.
Consecutive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about an extended leave or extended administrative leave. That's what I had in mind.
I'm just wondering, are there other examples of what a discipline might be that, other than an administrative leave?
Well, yes, there could be a letter put in a file, for example.
That's a one-time deal. That doesn't jibe with the 5 days. So I'm just
Right.
wondering.
So we need to let the town administrator have some leeway into, disciplining staff, which hopefully won't need to come up very often.
Right. It can be a warning. It can be a letter. It can But when you, and it could be 1 day or 2 days or 3 days, but we felt
Right.
once you get past 5, now you're, as Jennifer said, you're impacting the other staff and operations as well.
Yeah, I'm just trying to clarify. So your thinking was that if whatever it is results in someone not being at work for a day or 2 or whatever, that's the issue, right?
Well, that's under the purview of the town administrator, but that if, when it comes to 5 days, then we're talking about something that affects the staff. It's something we should be aware of. It's something we should be able to give guidance or direction.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just trying to clarify. So if it happens 3 times, 2 days here, 3 days there, you add them up, and then when you hit a trigger point, you do something. I'm trying to understand what the intent
I
was.
think that's a good question that we do need to get answered.
I think a
Because if
lot
we
of
have
that,
somebody who's 2 days here, 2 days there.
I agree. I agree with the principle that when it's a big deal, we ought to weigh in. But what is going to be the trigger for the big deal? That's the thing.
well, to some degree, I think we have to trust that we've hired a town administrator that is going to keep us in the loop about these things. And if it gets to a point of a severe discipline problem, then it should come to the select board.
Yeah,
Yeah, you might add some wording in there about that. The town administrator shall alert the board to, significant.
Again,
Blah, blah, blah.
operating procedure.
yes. Okay,
Another question, have we agreed that the people know what we mean by the executive office? I mean, yeah, it's a natural, but have we actually started using that phrase?
I think we could address that in the.
We can just do it, I guess.
Yeah.
but
We should start using it then.
Yes.
Right.
All right. Well, speaking of executive, I think we should go to executive session. I just alerted Joe that we were going to be about to move into that, given the fact that it is 5. So I think this has been very productive, and thank you, everybody. So what I'm going to do is to move to adjourn to conduct an executive session via separate Zoom event and not to reconvene an open session after completion of the executive session, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel per Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, 21, subsection A2 for the police chief. And just to further note that this would be detrimental to the town to discuss an open session.
Second.
Okay.
Okay, Les,
Fox, aye.
Diana,
Kapari, aye.
Wes,
Okay.
and John.
Markowitz, aye.
Campbell, I. And thank you, Judy. And I will see the rest of you in executive session. All right.